Want to learn more about how video games get made? Let's break down some common terms you'll hear discussed about video game development with examples. Pre-production is the earliest stage in game development. This is typically when a really small team, like the game's directors, meet to discuss what they think the vision for the game should be, what it should look like, how it should play, what it should feel and sound like. This is also where you figure out the logistics of game development, like how much the game is going to cost, how many people you need to work on it, how many people from different backgrounds like programmers, artists, designers, things like that. In pre-production, you're also deciding on the scope of the game, which is basically how big it's going to be, how many features are there going to be, how long is the game going to take to play. And so once pre-production is complete, then you transition into production, which is where the game is actually getting made, where the code is being written, the art's being created, the levels are getting designed. It's during production that what are called assets, or basically all the things that developers make to put into the game, actually get made. So think the grass that you walk on, the clouds in the sky, the sound of the birds chirping in the background. As production progresses, you get what are called builds, which are unique versions of a game that exist at different points in development. So you might hear a developer say in like early builds of the game, we had this issue, and typically in early builds, you don't have all the assets complete, so there's a lot of what are called placeholder objects. So if you're in like a city, for example, instead of having a building in certain places, you might just have giant blank rectangles because they're supposed to simulate where the assets are going to go eventually. If you've ever booted up a game, like let's say Minecraft, for example, you'll notice in the bottom right corner, there are typically a bunch of different numbers and like a version ID that's typically telling you what build of the game it's currently on. So early versions of a game are typically called alphas, and this is where you maybe don't have all the assets complete. So imagine that those skyscrapers that we talked about are still just rectangles, but you have all the different pieces of the game in place where it can be played and you can get a sense of how the game is supposed to feel. And so this footage you're seeing above me right now is from God of War 2018, and you'll notice that maybe there aren't colors on a lot of things, or maybe some things are still like blocks, like they haven't finished the asset, but you can get a feel for what the final game is supposed to look like. It's typically around the alpha period when developers will make something called a vertical slice. This is a really technical term that basically just means a feature complete small section of the game that you can either show to a publisher to ask them to fund the rest of the game, or that you can show the public to build up excitement. And so this clip you're seeing now is from E3 when they first unveiled God of War 2018, and everything that was in this clip was a vertical slice. So they had completed all the different assets and features for this little section of the game, but they actually hadn't finished the rest of the game at all. There was nothing else made. You can think of a vertical slice kind of like a proof of concept. So then you get to what's called a beta, which is where you have all the assets complete, so all the stuff looks how it's supposed to look, everything sounds how it's supposed to sound, but maybe there's still a few bugs left, but you're pretty close to having a polished version for release. So if you ever hear of a game, especially a multiplayer game, announce that they're doing a beta, it typically means that they're letting you play an almost finished build of the game, so that way they can look for bugs or other things that they want to fix before they actually release the game. Let me know in the comments if there are any other game design terms that don't make sense, and I'm happy to break them down for you.